So coming off of the previous chapter, we saw Genos responding to the Forest King attacking a city. This Forest King is a dragon level monster. And we also saw Genos' new upgrades, which in this chapter is being called Lightning Core. And it seems like he was easily able to deal with the Forest King. He also said that he'd like to ask Saitama for another sparring match. And that brings us into this chapter where he meets up with Saitama in his new apartment in the Hero Association, which they also discuss. And it eventually gets to the point of Genos asking Saitama for said sparring match. And they go out, and as they're making their way to the area where they're going to spar, Saitama says, man, there sure have been a lot of monsters lately. It's easier to find a monster than it is to find a stag beetle now. And the implication for this, or at least what it was kind of revealed a couple chapters back, is that it's because God is aware that Saitama removed his limiter. And since that's happened, he's kind of been ramping up the amount of monsters that have been coming out. Either through what he's done to mankind, you know, through them naturally becoming monsters, or him just straight up making them, which you know that he is absolutely capable of. As we saw that he just was able to make Sage Centipede. So this is more so in a response of Saitama more than anything. He's trying to make more monsters in order to compensate for that. But they get to where they're going to fight, and Genos activates his lightning core. And it's super bright, and it just bothers Saitama. Like, he's closing his eyes, not even concerned about Genos, who's about to just level him. And before Genos connects, he stops his punch right before his face because he realizes that Saitama just isn't concerned with him at all. He's more so bothered by the light in his eyes. And we see a massive dust cloud behind Saitama from Genos' punch. And as I'm sure you've seen, this looks almost exactly the same to the dust cloud that Saitama left behind Genos when they first had their sparring match in season 1. This whole sequence is supposed to parallel to that because after Saitama left that dust cloud behind Genos, Genos had said at that time, like, I can't picture myself coming even close to attaining Teacher's powers. And considering what's happening now, it's more so supposed to show where Genos' mental state is at. Because in theory, he kind of has reached that. Now, of course, he's obviously not as strong as Saitama, but at least the dust cloud that they are able to create is at the same level. So obviously Genos has increased in power, but he isn't able to see that. And that's also going to be one of Genos's big downfalls leading further into the story, and it's that he keeps comparing himself to Saitama. Rather than seeing his own growth, he can only see that he is not on Saitama's level, which, you know, realistically, he never will be, because no one will, aside from, like, God, but that's a story for another time. But he asks Saitama, like, don't you think I've gotten just a little bit stronger? And Saitama says, well, you've changed your parts, right? I mean, I guess you got a little stronger. And Genos says, I wonder if changing my parts can truly make me stronger, though. And while it literally does, I mean, it's evident, it's more so going into like an existential statement, I suppose. It's like, is Genos becoming stronger from just changing his parts, or does he ultimately need to become stronger by changing who he is as a person? And also, who Genos is as a person is like barely there at this point. I mean, yeah, he still has his humanity for sure, but I mean, it's more so like on a biological level. Like, I think Genos is only like a brain at this point. I mean, I don't think we've ever got confirmation on how much Genos's biology is left or his human physiology, but I think it's just a brain, which could be playing more into what's going to happen much later down the line in this arc. But just like before, Saitama is struggling to find words to tell Genos here, trying to give him some kind of encouragement, because last time he said, hey, you know, reach the top 10 of the S-class, and this time he's just like, yeah, you got a lot brighter at least, right? Yeah, Saitama's still not good with words. Both of these characters still have much development to go through for sure. But Genos, realizing that Saitama had just never been watching him, to be honest, even from the very start, he goes on to say that it's been over 2 months since he became his disciple. And that's fascinating because it's finally giving us a timeline of events, which this essentially means that 2 months of in-story time has passed since the beginning of the series. And that's kind of important because it lines up with Shibawa's prophecy, which came shortly after they had met, which of course is like, the world is in danger and it's probably going to happen 6 months from that time. So in theory, we have about, I don't know, 4 months until that's going to happen. Now, I don't know if that means it's literally going to play out the same way that it has already. There probably is going to be some kind of time skip, or time will just move faster at this point. But don't think that the series is coming to an end or anything. It's still, at least in my opinion, has another like at least 10 years of real time, because this arc is going to be very long, and then there's going to be like a third arc which might even be longer than that. But yeah, I just wanted to put that out there. But going further, Genos also says, you know, as weak as I was, you saw it fit to give me an initial assignment of making it into the top 10 of the hero rankings. And technically Genos could right now be in the top 10 of the hero rankings, at least power wise. I mean, there's no way to know for sure, especially since the hero rankings aren't predicated on power anyway. There's a lot of nonsense that goes into them, but considering the shakeup that's about to happen, we might get new hero rankings soon. Also, I wouldn't hold my breath on that, but I guess it is possible. It would be pretty exciting and interesting to me, at least. But then Genos starts talking about the new hero organization that we've been hearing about these last couple chapters, and it finally gets a name. They're called the Neo Heroes, and Genos is thinking about possibly joining them.
But first, let's talk about the sponsor of this video, the Ridge. So guys, if you're familiar with this channel, you know that we use the Ridge wallet and key cases here, but aside from those, the Ridge makes many products, such as rings, not a wedding band, it's a wedding solution, because the unique tungsten men's wedding bands are designed for the day in and day out. They have a dual layer design, 2 free replacements, include a travel case, and they have a no pinch grip design. Now, I'm not married or engaged, but I'm still gonna wear this thing outside because it's just so aesthetic, and then maybe it'll just stop all the hordes of people who are constantly hitting on me every day if they think that I'm just married instead. So guys, if you're interested in getting your very own Ridge ring, check out the link in the description and make sure you use code BIGZ. That way you'll get 10% off of your purchase. You'll also be helping me out as well. Thanks, guys.
Because he feels that he needs a change of environment. You know, being around God and Saitama, you know, the one above all the time, it's constantly putting him into this headspace that we were talking about. And that's another thing that is integral to Genos' growth, and it's that he ultimately needs to stop comparing himself to Saitama. It's like you playing basketball and you're constantly comparing yourself to LeBron. It's like, it's not really healthy. But Genos is aware of a lot here, because off panel, he was approached by one of the scouts of the Neo Heroes. The same way that we saw a couple chapters back that Excel was approached by a scout from the Hero Association, the same happened on the opposite end with Genos. But each and every one of the association scandals that are scheduled to be leaked soon could prove critically damaging. And that's really interesting, because it's like, wait, the scandals that are scheduled to be leaked soon, like there's going to be this huge revelation coming to the public about the Hero Association and the sneaky things that they've been doing behind the scenes that we saw Child Emperor was able to discover. And it's like, how does the Neo Heroes know this, and why are they telling the S-Class Heroes about this? I mean, I guess it's inevitable, but still. We also find out that the Neo Heroes have already surpassed 2,000 hero candidates compared to the 600 pro heroes of the Hero Association. That's another thing that we're finally finding out that I don't think we knew before. There's like 600 heroes in the Hero Association, and if you just go by the numbers that we have available to us, most of them in theory should be like C and B class heroes, because there's only 17 S class heroes, or somewhere around 17 or 18, and then there's like around 40 A class heroes. I think there's like less than 50. Now granted, we don't know all of the A class heroes and all the B and all the C, but just by my estimation, most of these heroes are like C and B class guys. So yeah, most of them are weaklings, which is understandable because there's only a select few people in the world who are like superhero level. He also says that they plan to enroll many strong individuals who have not yet been seen in the public eye or stood out up until now. And we've already seen this, like them recruiting Excel and Raiden, who very likely could be S-Class level in strength, but they're definitely not the only ones. There's going to be more of these would-be S-Class heroes out there, or just S-Class hero level individuals that just haven't joined the Hero Association, but they've somehow been scouted by the Neo Heroes. So expect like these new powerful characters to spring up. Possible maybe some we've already seen in the story that you wouldn't expect. But then Saitama asked Genos, like, you know, the reason you wanted to become stronger was some kind of revenge, right? And then the rampaging cyborg is brought up. Now, apparently this is like the literal translation for it, and they decided to go with this for now. But they are, of course, talking about the Mad Cyborg. It's the same thing. I'm gonna keep calling it the Mad Mad Cyborg, because that's what we've been calling it for years. But Saitama's like, are you sure he's still alive? We haven't heard from her or anything. And that's very true. And then Genos says something really interesting here. And he's like, however, there are some remaining records of the incidents from the same time period, which also document a particularly vicious monster. We didn't know about this before. Apparently there was also a monster around there, or from the same time period. And this is giving us more insight into possibly how the Mad Cyborg came to be, or what was going on at that time. Now, if you've been following my channel, you already know my theory on who the Mad Cyborg is, and I think it's Drive Knight. I'm not going to go into it. I've talked about it enough, and I have plenty of videos going over that topic. I'm actually going to come out with a new one soon, just so that a better resource for it is out there. But this monster could play into Drive Knight's origin into becoming the Mad Cyborg. Maybe that monster was sent by God, and maybe that's how he made Drive Knight into the Mad Cyborg. I mean, we saw in Blast's flashback that when he was fighting Elder Centipede, God appeared before him in like his Jupiter spherical form. So maybe Drive Knight originally was like a cyborg for justice, the way that Genos was. And when he was responding to this, in theory, monster attack that was going on, he was encountered by God and maybe accepted his influence unknowingly. Now, I know that it's said that the Mad Cyborg became the Mad Cyborg during a botched brain surgery or something like that, but I don't know. We don't really know everything yet. We barely know anything. I mean, there's tons of people who don't think that Drive Knight is the Mad Cyborg, so still a lot more to go into this, but I do like the addition of us knowing that there was a vicious monster from the same time period. It's definitely going to come back for sure, and obviously it has something to do with God since it's a monster. But then Saitama's like, but what if I killed it? Like, I just randomly ran into him one day, killed him, and forgot about it. And Genos says the rampaging cyborg was extraordinarily powerful. You probably would have remembered if you fought it. And Saitama's like, I don't really remember most of the monsters I kill. And it's like, when this first came out of the webcomic, I wondered, like, would Saitama remember that he fought Boros? I mean, technically he should, right? It was kind of a big deal. Aside from just his power, it was like a big event. But Genos is ultimately like, if I do wind up finding him, I'm gonna make sure I win. And it just goes back to, I think one is reminding us that the Mad Cyborg is a thing, first of all, because it is Genos's big ultimate story, but he's also maybe trying to put doubt in our minds, like, hey, maybe the Mad Cyborg isn't around anymore. Like, why haven't we heard from him? Why haven't we seen him? Maybe he did die. Maybe Saitama killed him. It's like, no, of course not. It's because he's been Drive Knight this whole time, just hiding in plain sight. That's why we haven't been hearing about him. But it ultimately comes down to Genos saying that he's thinking about transferring over to the Neo Heroes. Going back to everything we've been talking about how he's been feeling stagnant. He wants a change of environment, possibly. The Hero Association, their corruption coming to light soon. And then he even said that he can get Saitama to come over with him as well, because they asked him to introduce any individuals he thought particularly high up. And Saitama's like, I'm not really interested. Too much effort. And then Genos is like, all right, then I won't do it either. And that's where the chapter ends. So yeah, it's Genos and Saitama for sure staying in the Hero Association. But this is obviously just the beginning. And if you're curious about who of the S-Class are going to join the Neo Heroes, well, I don't want to influence your decision too much, but if you go through the last couple chapters, it's possible we may have seen some of the candidates already. Maybe the seeds have already been planted. But yeah, that's it for the video, guys. If you liked it, please give it a like and let me know what you think about all this in the comments. Subscribe also if you haven't already. Have a great day. I'll see you in the next one.